Cut.
Oh, okay. Conjugation. Ito ay kesa ko yung kiyatani ko.
See.
Okay. Ako.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. Yatsinate Queenie Tletushke at Gilcott State Park. Het Yatsinate Shaw Du Jiwu. Het Yatsinate Shakawu Du Jiwu. Yatsinate treatment Jenaha. Jenaha Leka Henok bad omen, bad taboo. Wushin Kananik.
Conjugation. Conjugation hawakshi kayes ni Neek. Well, Dechsan de Chako ishu hikin Chosatin. We Sitka Sentinel. Yudo sak we Neek Kuku. Hasu hawakshi kay has arsene. We Ayahai. Ayahai away. Yatsinate. We do a jack. Yewe Ausatin. We watchman. Una yi adachawe. Yatsinate uwa unt. Had Dutlika Katlu Lidich Adaye Wuti. Akewu. Kunachawe. Dutlitur Ayayeosene. Ishan Dane Achtuati. Gwashe Ayahai Chosatin. Kachwa Akawe has the in Kachwaniki. Kleshla Yakuti Kawakshiki is the Neyata. Kleshdasa Ayanach Awe a jich to tea Aya Adyawne. We Yatsine. Yisaku Ush that Yaksawe Hakusti. Hilches Chawasa ye Kagachtune. Hilches Chawasa ye Kagachtunuk Yaha Ani Cook. Acho a Kleshdasa has Awasku. Acho a ye hasuwaji. Ashlekatat has to Tawasaku a Jaki Hilwasaka Kwati. But Kleshengit Usti Hilwasaka Kwati. Yewe has to Tundatani. Kesh has Awasku a dot. Shlekatat the Yakko Kudzati. Shlekatat the Jich to tea at Yawuni. Ohan Kwa to Saku. Ya Hashkashniki. Uchke Kwati Aya Kakusti. Welches Dachtaseko at Aya Kesha Jich Gach to tea at Yawuni. At Yawuni Kach Kashasikwa at Aya. Heshtis Yuchatang. A dekut de Nugu, Yewe Achtuasagu to Saku. At the Katka, Ha Ani Cook. One canines ye waji, ya could dach sheer the hene kak or ha ani kach. Kesh has awaska. Kesha ji has a tea. At Yawone. Ishan away ohan. Ha shish ko has aya. Ye away cow doodly you. We hoots. Has the nation ayash the cutway at go to. Has to aya you chach the tannen. Ka you chach the gauken. Gwash at katu de ayagach to art. Has the ani kach. Yewe one canines yewe ka shingit ani. Shingit ani ka deshu. Shkakwe. Klak an. Yakdan. Kunia. Daisling. Ada awe ko at hastu ani aya yatsine. When kanin sadat you tuchtatan. Gwell haneli dachwugud at gatude. Hastu ani kaye hawuti. Joya hashada hanich hashada nakhi hasati. Acho atel has awas koko.
Oh, well, gonna cheese shock honey. Just caught State Park play cock enoch you do a sock. On a chilcot ka scoot ku where yatsinate ku on a trying to think of the word for everywhere.
The katye.
Yeah, to the cut age. Gonna cheese.
Okay. Cheese. Łukaháa.
Ayachawe Khatsu Yatsine that Tuch the Tanya that Kagonanach Sitiowe Ohan Gashta Kwan Kawan Kanins Yatsine Wutusatin Haani Adyana good diowe Wutusatin Agawe Hasa Unch Ha Kau Akua Tesh Yeg Cha Tesh Cha a eating na chayati yagune a yagune we yatsinate. Igaya chun kug bunal chish ha inki nigi inigo.
Gonna cheese.
Tsukke Johan Jakuta Neek. Sheesh. Katewu sake jiwu hayu katangitat. Any language questions or thoughts before we move on to the conjugation?
Nee. Hatlinget also do sakyata hatlinget enrolled or listed. I saw yasai for names, but I was trying to think of a word, and I looked it up in thesaurus, trying to see how you could say like students were enrolled or listed or.
Oh, yeah, we might like stretch it to like a bit of a metaphor, and you could say something like kaya kajet kat hasa kaushikit hastu sai.
Kayakaje.
But kaya kajet kat
Sitting.
hastu sai kach hasa kaushikit. On a chair. Or maybe we could say, what if we said kaya kajet hasu ahin? That might be shorter. He claimed a chair.
Claim.
Right, because that's really what they do, is they kind of see.
But not sheesh, I've spent quite a bit of time trying to figure that out. Sheesh.
I was thinking of BIA enrollments and tribal enrollments and stuff since you said it. That one maybe you could say Shukat Kukukukach Hastusayeti. Their name is on the paper of the indigenous people. But yeah, I like Tasuahin. Cuisine, what's
Yeah, could you put that in the,
that? Oops, I got the word. Wrong. I might say just yayati. Just say it's there.
Nashtish?
Okay. Cool. What's that one?
I had a question in regards to kind of like what I talked about. Ya, tsin, at. I was trying to translate ya, tsin, at in my head in English. And when I look at that, this strong being, this strong thing, how could you directly, how can you, what is a direct translation for ya, tsin, at?
We were kind of we were talking about direction and location. That already was filling up the brains for the intermediate students. Then we started talking about vowel shift and Tlingit compounding, and then their heads just blew up. So we're like, all right, we better stop class. And they kept asking questions. And I was like, I'll keep going all night long. But yeah, that's a good question. So you hear that scene in there, right? So we know that's coming from a verb. And I think we might have talked about this one just the other day too in here. So here's scene, but the first we see yatsin here, and that's different. That means to be alive. So that's why the name is ak tak tsin, because it's alive in the little lake. And that refers to frogs, because they freeze, but they're still alive. Like I think we're talking about this on Monday, perhaps, like a mosquito and a frog. Tak kachicht has wulich'éx. Tak kanach. John away. Tak iti has wulich'éx aka has yatsin yesu. So they freeze in the winter, but nevertheless, they thaw out in the fall, and then they're still alive. So there's a Yesh Yatzin that's a Tlingit name. Auk Tatzin is a Tlingit name. So Yatzin 8 is Yatzini At. So there's a couple things that do go on there. Most vowels, when they run into Ut, they'll just become 8. It'll just push that A to go to the E vowel. That switch does happen in both directions. Te can become ta. So when you have te, which is a rock, and you add a suffix or you compound it, it'll push it to go long and low. So you get like te rocks. But then if you add something to the end of that one, and then it ends up shortening, it'll shorten back to the letter A. Another one that'll do this is ch'eo. So ch'eo, if you have dak, ch'eo, ut, inland, sand, thing. But when those contract, it goes duck, ch'ao, ad. And these are some of the rules. I was going to put together like a bunch of examples and stuff to show, but you'll see it. Sate is sa'at, shayet, sha, yi, ut. And so it affects the tone and also affects the A to the E vowel. There's a bit of switch that goes on there, which is really interesting. And also, if you go up to car cross, there's a bunch of A vowels that just become E vowels anyways. So they say he'eh, and they'll say his. So there's E's in both of those, right? And it's a dialect thing. But then there's also some it's just kind of fluid how that A and the E vowel will just turn into each other. And there's a little bit of work maybe to do to figure out what the patterns are. It all has to do with vowel lengthening and shortening though. So that's where you get shatsini at the living.
So I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry about that.
Okay.
I guess I'm wondering, is there a specific, I mean, I guess it's contextual when it becomes a thing to a being, huh?
Well, so like a bear, if you really want to show it respect, you change its name. I think other Dene groups do this as well. Like they've got a name for it, but they'll just call it that brown thing, or it's not like we have a name for it, hoots, and we use that name. But if we're really being respectful, and not that we're being disrespectful by saying hoots, but we're like, we respect you so much, we're not even gonna say your name. We're gonna just say the living thing. But also if you're out in the woods, like if you say, well, I've been told if you're out in the woods and you start saying hoots, they'll come. You're like, yeah? And? But that's why you say yatsinate, because then they might not know you. I don't know, it's like a little bit of a code talk. A lot like I think it's similar to hunting. You're not supposed to say I'm hunting. Like if Elmer Fudd was Tlingit, he would never get a rabbit. It's like I'm hunting rabbits. All the rabbits are like, what? We're out. Sucker. But so if he was Tlingit, he'd just say, good. I'm just walking around. Just walking around. Nothing's going on here. Because you gotta be I think it's a combination of just understanding that things can hear. And they talk about that and that means like even if you just said it at a normal voice, it could hear you from way over across the way.
Okay, thanks. I guess I was just trying to figure out if there was some way to relate it in English that we're talking about a bear. But it's no way, I think, huh?
No, it's like a code name for it.
Yeah, right.
It's like we're not going to say its name because we respect it so much. So you just call
Yeah,
it's a living thing.
I hear you. Okay, all right, thank you. That's
Moved away from it though.
sorry.
Do
I'm
you-
getting a bad connection.
Was there a delay here?
She's in her prayers called gets at
Yeah, and that was very common when you talk to them, like before going in the woods. There's a recording of Lily White on a boat, and she's like, "Hashish kohas," and she was talking to bears, because that's the same term we use for ancestors. Even that, like, there's these words like hashagun and hashaka. But if you really analyze how thing gets used, like those words aren't used very often. They just say them. Has. You'd say yan has ausene, achyan tu adiyeh. That's the whole phrase. They already prepared the path for us. We know who they are, but it's the same thing. It's like so much respect that it's like you can't even say their name. And that's really getting back to this old way of thinking. I think it's really wonderful to do. And it makes me think also of Ḳukaháa, Norman James, and how he really lives those values. And so we'd have these exercises. There'd be a little cartoon bear. He's like, I'm not doing that. Change that one. Make it a dog. Do whatever you want, but I'm not doing it like that. So we'd have to change it to like a different animal, even a little cartoon. Which
Yeah,
is good.
appreciate it.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was trying to figure out how to put it, like if I was gonna write a short story or something and translate it in English and use it as a one word. I couldn't think of it, and it's the same thing as biting the banks. In my mind, I was thinking of if there was one way to say it, but just biting the banks is, I guess, is what it is. Like those cultural teachings you're talking about, meaning that's how we pass that knowledge.
Oh, yeah, wow. Sheesh. Okay, I think we have another more breaking news. Well, how are we gonna say this just in? Chayaya chayaya chayuk kun Neek. Someone's quickly going to tell this to people.
Iwakshiyede kukwasne. Screen share. Yana chushugu news story away. Ushkendenda at away. Like ach Lily, hope you do a sock. Nach ein akausine. Jánwu chawutach chi nach enach duliech. Zu ti woody nach enach duliech. Jánwu chawutach chi achlatul nach ein saak. Ti woody achlatul nach ein saak. Ke aguch shaguk we jánwu kusteyi. Kusteyi. Gusawe ak gwallun. Gwatgin ak gwallun. Questions for class. Jánwu yisitinge. Gusuwe. Jánwu yilunge. Gunas chish.
Okay.
Gunastish kashuk khatin jánwu.
Gusuwe.
Shah wasus? Yeah. No. We call it Sheep Mountain, which isn't the right name for it. Yinde Thane. Yinde Goose. Do you Katin Jánwu.
Shanakait. Ineshi. Green, clues. You do a sock. Clues. Talk. Inland from Thane.
Yada at kashle to Hwasatin.
Yeah, what?
Jánwu I wasatini in my garage.
How? Hakwaun.
For weaving.
Okay. Ide kakunik tlek ashkasnik with janwudat. Ya achkak klein. Kadashan. You do sagen. Kadashan. Llukach adichwusatin. Kushta hiti dach. Gleit chach enach Paul Wilson naya du sai. Hu away ach kla du ish du dlak du yit. Ye away chanakawanik. Ya chata ya. Dach du shujin katawe ach katagu. Ya tag. Gwash ke katag shuahi. Ya ach tuasagu ach yit kas in. Jánwu aya ak watlun. Huji ayi ak watlun. Ay Jánwu. Shqakwe aya ke uwa wat hu. Ka deshu. Tlqud. Tltakat at tlqud aya. Ye awa shqakwe Naki shqakwidach aya naki de haswu steen ka deyi a kach. Gulki jin kai a kanachwe du caboose. Hit aya hit wududliach we caboose. Ja, je dat hit wusati. Ye awe ya has de hasakawa chak. Aka awe a dachaya haskak wa shashakide. Echwasaku asa du asak llingit chinach. Kleid chach inach a Denver Glacier you do asak. Gwell hanachus was as llingit sai. Dachadushu jinkatawe katagu. Kati awe shashakide wugu du yit kasi. Kleinach jánwu has awastin. Has awsatin aka has awalun. Has yawadlaq. Du yit has aya. Yinde has awaya. Ya has de dikhi kach has awaya. Kaboost aya hasu at. Akaya has yakwahe. Ya take gi taat anach. Ye awe has de daye wuti ko qaq. Qaq awe has de jin konach yigi. Ush klein yach yati yaha anikak. Qaq konach awe du tawasagu aya has de jánwu yi. We caboose tayi wuti. Ye awe wulich'éx we ka tayi. Taad kanach aya ye wuti. Has chasatin chan hasakawani kelkatain wutu a chew. Yel de katad kanach wulich'éx ka tayich a wulgas aya we qaq. Du tawasagu at chai. Ye awe achlish hiti de hasu at jánwu daye has jiwaneyan. Chanakawanik hajiwa nayadi. Gwal yes aya nayadi yanuwane. Qat nayadi kundachawe haqayak chkud ku'u. Gwal we chukwa jánwu ku'a ye jak we yes katak. Ya du yuwu a daye wuti. Wasa du sak? Katratse wuk keltai. Talo you do sak let kak enach yisikuke wasa du sago at. Ha, katratse tu. Gwell tu awe a kaye yeti a yuwu. Ye yuwu ka tu awe a dacha kawachash. Naya di kach awe has awsa I. Yel de kat kuuka kwachayata. Ye awe llingit kusti. Hu awe de tawasagu wit ayach. Woosh wutu de hain. Wooch in nayakach tu Ḳukaháa at chai. Tak titsu sak. Has de tawasagu sak echi has awsa I. Kun yagi sakshawe has awsa I. A kach ayatech a qatl. Yel de kat qa a dusa a dati juwane. Tech a qatl. Gsmålaháis. Yasak echi kach. Jánwu ane qo'ash de kat qa has de qatli has Ḳukaháa. Ye awe ach tu yake ach I aw llatu. A dequdusti ye llingit yach. Kunchishach edisa achi. Yijies akak gwanig. So I thought I'd tell you guys a jánwu story. I'll translate it and see how we did. So my uncle, his name is Ḳukaháa. He was my great uncle. He was Ḥukah Adi. he was my mother's father's sister's son. And he was 70 years old. And he called us up. He said, go mountain goat hunting one last time with my sons for my 70th year of life. Like, whoa, wow. So he and his sons came over. His sons are Teqwidi. He's Ḳukaháa. He's from the River Otter House. And so they came over to Skagway, where he grew up in Skagway and in Haines. And in Skagway, you go north about 5 miles on the train tracks, and there's a caboose that's been made into a house. You can camp in it, it's got a little stove. And so they packed it full of their gear, and they started hiking. He's 70 years old. It's a mystery how he made it to the mountaintop, but he did. That's what he wanted to do. And they went up, they got one, saw one, got it. Packed it back on their backs for him. They're very happy to do that for their dad. Because he just tells, he's like, it's my last one. And so they got it. And then they were going to camp in that caboose for a night. And somewhere around that caboose, there was this lynx. And that lynx really wanted that jánwu. And so we saw them the next day and said, oh, we hardly slept at all. That lynx was just sitting under the caboose, just scratching, like scratching, long scratches on the bottom of that, trying to get through the floor. So they had to kind of stay awake in case it got in, you know. So they came back, and in the fall and the winter, when folks start hunting, all their fish is pretty much ready. So they had packed some naidi over, some half-dry sockeye. And he was saying, when you get your first jánwu of the season, you cut the tallow from around the stomach part of it. There's this thick tallow that's on there. And you bake it on top of the naidi. And everybody takes a bite of it. And he was like that. He would have these like kind of processes. Like everybody has to have this. And there's like a bit of a ceremony. And he used to render, and his kids still do, and his wife. They would render hooligan grease. In a similar way, everybody who worked on the grease got one, they call it one saltine cracker. And you put it on top of the grease, and it floats the whole time it cooks. And when that grease is ready, you eat your cracker. So, and he was funny. He was, he always had good jokes. I had this real nice hunting knife I bought. I thought it was really something. And one time he asked me for a knife, and I handed it to him. He throws it down and goes, duller than a teaspoon. It broke my heart, but I thought it was funny. Yeah, I was trying to remember it too. I don't know why. I had a hard time remembering that word. But then I remembered one time, Ḳukaháa, she told me, x'úxʼ, the name for candle, comes from, they used to make it out of tallow. And then that's how I was like, oh yeah. And then because we also call it x'úxʼ, I just assumed that's where it was from. It's from a tallow lamp. So that's how I remembered that word. Sheesh.
Las cheese.
Ah,
We gak atskane.
yeah, well.
Karashanish, Doc Tonk, you do a sock, eh?
Yeah.
Oh.
Ďaknáchsa was the tien. Agwantánaga.
What?
Ha. Glekach inach pas. Paul?
Paul Sr.?
Yeah, well.
Mm-hmm.
Ha. Gultishateach akwa wooz. Gonna cheese you, hon. Wulich'éx.
Kashukawe,
Ah,
x'úxʼ, jánwu adat, Cajun, jánwu, Ḳukaháa, Ďáks'úxʼ, Ka, Ayachat, Ya, jánwu wulich'éx, Ḳukaháa, Yahweh,
Yeah, away. What's the good?
Ḳukaháa, Canada, Kunach, Kusiat, Ya, Shakat, Gratier, Gal Ashua, Tat De, Ya, jánwu Duga. I carried it. Jánwu Tli, Tlash. I took the hide only. I had to get back to my camp. Good thing. My camp. Achidi. Tlash Gusa. Achaway. Ya, jánwu Duga. Yahweh. Jinkat. Cajun, Katlech, Gao, Yatat, November 11th. Kunach Kusiat, Ya, jánwu Duga, Kanak, saved my life. Radio, Kaudatan, U.S. Coast Guard, Tlesh, Chat, Kaudatan, they didn't answer. Alaska Lumber and Pulp Watchman. Chat Kaudatan. Anyway, I slept under the hide. I got the meat the next day. 100 pounds pack. Jinkat Kus Et. Achaway. Chatgana. Every 10 steps I sat down. I had to plan every step. Dak Un Gwestier Cajun Katlech Gal. Took me 4 to 6 hours to get off the mountain, 100-pound pack. Tleka Katlech Tak Katagu. Yes, sir. I was 41, 1996, November 11th. Anybody that gets a goat, I don't care if it's down low. They deserve it. It is nothing but work.
Yak esh gas Neek gnas cheese.
Yeah, wow.
Gunas cheese. Gunas cheese achit isa achi hooch.
Yak gonna cheese away yishkalniki. Yak Yewe Lidzi agent Adaya agent. Chalk away Kati Hazawa Tloon. sha shakig, wekao, wasa haswulich'éx. In the chat, I put a number of images, which are your perfective charts. So you can refer to them in case that does help to make your predictions. We'll try and do about 15 minutes of predictions and about 15 minutes of translation work. So let's go back to Gudesa. Yeah. So we did the positive perfective. We're going to hit on the negative, and then we're going to go back and forth and look at positives and negatives. So, the perfective has the w in there, has the plus I classifier. Those are the two main things it's got to have. So the negative is going to have the irrealis, and the perfective marker, y. Most often they're just going to combine, but they will sort of affect how the prefix looks because the classifier is minus I. That means it's 0. For the 0 classifier, it's going to be nothing. And that takes a little while to get used to. Then it's going to be da, sha, sa, sha, sh. All the non-zero plus D's will have no vowel in the classifier. It will only be a consonant. And this letter A can get knocked out of there pretty easy. And I'll show you what will knock that letter A out. So that's why ausiku or umsiku becomes awusku for both. There's no amasku. You can't say that. Awusku. But it's predictable. There's a number of factors that come into play here. But so we write that with a letter A with this little slash through it. Say it got knocked out. 4, here's something wild. The letter I will not get knocked out. So when you have those things. However, for Southern speakers, they will drop that vowel sometimes. I'll show you some things when we look at Duktuj, because that's a Southern speaker who tells that story from Henya. Okay. The stem variation for the negative perfective, it goes like this. Even though there's all these different things right here, here's the whole thing. An open 0 will be short and high. Everything else will be long and low. However, we remember the glottal and this should say ejective. How come I can't change it? Okay. I'll change that later. That should say ejective. The glottal and the ejective cannot go low, so they say high. Everything wants to be long and low. Everything. Except for a 0 open and a glottal or ejective. Any questions about that?
So this is negative perfective. So whereas in the positive perfective, some parts might go plus D, now in the negative, it'll just lose the consonant instead of adding a D.
Well, any plus D that's minus I is only the consonant. So you're going to see this for all the futures as well. So you could say, I'm going to study, you'll say, Klingit Stuk. No vowel at all in that classifier.
And minus I indicates generally that the event did not happen.
Yep.
Okay.
And I just like to think of it as like it's minus I is just that's how it was born. But then you got to turn the I switch on to say it happened. So it's almost always minus I, and so as far as the number of modes there are. But we speak in a lot of perfective verbs. This thing happened, that thing happened, this other thing happened. But now we're going to go to the didn't happen. That's one of the big thing that triggers the prefix to be different.
And why do they generally go plus D? Did you say that was for reflexive?
Yes. So most commonly you're dealing with doing that to the self, seeing myself, talking to myself, wrote on myself, told myself, taught myself, or whatever you do to yourself, it's your business. But then also to do things to each other. So if whoosh is ever in front of it, that'll just push it to be plus D. Not wooch-een, but whoosh. Any whoosh or whooch in front of a verb will push it plus D. There are some verbs that are just naturally plus D, and you'll just sort of note that, like, oh, that's one of those plus D verbs, like conversing, because it's something where the subject is also the object. But then like ayaw de ti, right? That's just how it is. It's just a plus D verb. There are other verbs where it'll go plus D when you kick the object out. So you could say, Ḳukaháa, I'm sewing it, like a jacket or moccasins. Ḳukaháa. Ḳukaháa, I'm sewing. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. It's not about doing it to a thing. Ḳudatu, I'm reading. Ḳutu, I'm reading this. Okay. Okay. So this is what they look like. So again, it's not a time marker. We're just saying the perfective marker says, did it happen or not? And this is the not part. So you get hua. So when we look at two, here's the magic with both to and with, we won't look at I right now. To will go long if there's no vowel in the classifier, right? Vowel short, no vowel long. Vowel short, no vowel long. That's the key. So here you got hua, wutu, yi, wu, awa. Keshfu good, didn't go. Kesh awu good, nobody went. Hwada, wutuda, yida. So we do get into sort of like pattern predicting here. There's the 0. That's different than everything else on this chart. But this da is exactly the same as sa, sha, and sha, except we change that consonant. We change from a D to an S to an L to an SH. That's the key difference. When you're changing that classifier, you're usually just changing a consonant. For the plus D forms, they are also almost identical. We just chop that A off. All the fourth persons, woulda, wouldas, woulddush, wouldush. That's what they have to be. Any questions? Everybody okay? We'll just put this in action too. Like, so some of this, and these charts are here, like to start looking at them. But what we're also sort of seeing is like these things put in a certain order have specific results. When you put the thematic on here, changes it, but not a whole lot. But so this is, so like, you'd say yao tu wa glak. We succeeded. Kesh yao tu glak. The big thing is like getting that wa out of there, because that wa is that plus I ya classifier.
Wouldn't the duh column change to just losing the vowel since this is negative?
For duh, you cannot knock that vowel out.
Oh, so it
If you knock
stays.
the vowel out, it'd just be a T, which would be weird.
Oh, I see.
Or a D, I don't know what it would be. But you, yeah, you can.
Okay.
But with these ones, sa, sha, and sha, the vowel can get knocked out. Okay, and so here's the chart. The chart is here for you to just keep it on you. You make it your new, what do they call it, American Express, the don't leave home without it. just consult the chart while you're sort of putting this together. But there are specific patterns, and these patterns are caused by the things that are there. The arealis, the perfective marker. The biggest change, though, is that the classifier is now minus I. So, you know, I wrote it. Kauch shi hit. It's short. I didn't write it. Kesh kahwa shahid. I didn't write it. So it's got to go through those changes. This is a big step for all language learners. There's a lot of people who speak Tlingit and they get some of this stuff a little bit mixed up as well. It's a big shift. We're going to take a look at what happens. And we're going to talk about what knocks out that letter A. These are the things. If any of these things, na, qa, it has to be qa, it can't be contracted, y or daqa or du. If any of those pop up and nothing is in, even like a zero marker, if there is no sound in between them and the classifier, they will knock that letter A right out of there. The w is the thing that does it. Kesh a w sku. That's why it's a sa. That's a sa classifier, but the A got knocked out. We'll look at some examples. It's a lot to absorb, but it's also, just to let you know, it's all predictable. All of it is. Any questions? Okay. So we were dirty last time. We were dirty on Monday. We've had 2 whole days to shower. So we're going to get klesh. We're going to have and y, which are going to run together. But this L is the sh is the classifier that's determined by the mode. However, because the perfective runs into it, touches it, that letter A is like, ew, don't touch me, I'm leaving. It's gone. So we should expect all the way down, just that letter L. So, and then also, long and high, every time. Here's your chance to declare it. I am not dirty. If you don't get it right, you gotta hit the showers. I'm just kidding. Let's try to keep it light.
Kesh chat wulich'éx.
No awush though. You can't have There's nothing that would there wouldn't be there.
Wulich'éx.
Yeah, away. Keshchat wulich'éx. Good job being clean. Clean folks. Okay, so this reveals the pattern. Wulich'éx. If you do this enough times, it does become clear. It's like such a thing when we work on Tlingit stuff. Like all these charts and patterns doesn't make any sense. You start doing them in practice, like, okay, I see it. There, it's right there. It's right there. And now when you go look up new verbs as you're putting stuff together, just notice when it's doing these types of things. So here's the secret here. I don't think this verb's going to change the whole way down because there's nothing that can contract. It's already happened. You are not dirty.
Like it'd be kesh wulich'éx.
Kesh wulich'éx. Keep it long. Keep it long. Okay. Easy. It's easy being clean. They aren't dirty.
Just wulich'éx.
Whoosh. Just whoosh. Just
Wulich'éx.
kesh wulich'éx. Okay. 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 We are not dirty. The verb won't change. It's the pronoun. Pronoun will be the only thing changing here.
x'úxʼ.
Yeah, away. Ḵukaháa. Y'all aren't dirty.
wulich'éx.
Yeah, away. Okay. They all are not dirty.
x'úxʼ.
Okay. Yeah, away. People aren't dirty.
Mm.
You're gonna have k.
X's. That's wulich'éx.
Wulich'éx. Káxunáchuchéúhan. Nailed it. So even though there's a whole bunch of new stuff, like the verb itself is less likely to change. Just because that negative, there's stuff already packed in that's going to impact it. So what we saw with the positive is we went to x'úxʼ, right? So we went from w to w. That won't happen because you've got two things in there, and it's already contracted the classifier. Yak'é. Chonach yak'é, Johan. Gunchish. So,
Sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I have to say it's a little confusing because this is not the same as the pronoun order that you usually have, which is I, us, you, you all. So I get, especially with the he, she, it, sometimes it's like, well, is that plural or singular? So
Okay.
anyhow, that's just a little distracting to me, but
Good
carry
point.
on.
I will go through and reorder. There are 380 slides, but I think I can
No,
do it.
you don't have to.
Just this is a long party for this yeah. So this one is gonna go I, you, them, we, y'all, them all. So we'll probably just stick with that order. I will probably go through and change it to theys and they all. Still working on that sort of shift. But gonna cheese. So that's the positive and negative perfective. So the goal here is like just to show you the things, then do a whole bunch of practice, so we can start to get these patterns down. Then we'll just sort of set this aside and say, hey, let's master this perfective. Let's get every single possible prefix we can, and then we'll know how they get put together. And then we'll look at the negative perfective, then we'll do futures. And that's kind of our path here as far as what we're trying to do. Just that if we can master perfective and future, we could do so much talking. Like you really can. What happened? What's gonna happen? The right now part's a little trickier, and we'll get to some of the reasons why. Okay.
So does yeah always go to w?
Yeah, they just run into each other.
And you dropped the a because why?
So what happens is if this perfective, there's nothing in between the perfective marker and a classifier with the letter A that's not duh. Duh is like, can't touch my vowel. I'm a letter D, can't do anything. But the other ones, sha, sha, and sa. If a perfective marker is the only thing next to that classifier, it will cause it to get knocked out.
So the perfective marker being y or w?
It's y. It's y on its own, but it changes to w once other things come around it.
So the first thing you did was drop the a. The second thing you did was change y to w?
Let's see. Oops. Not too far.
I mean, did you make that decision of dropping the A after you changed it to W or before, or I don't understand the mechanics here.
Okay. So what we have is we have plus y, which is going to be w. That's just what it's going to be, because we don't make this ng sound anymore. So that just becomes a w. Just like wulich'éx is just, that's usually, nowadays, even though we write it like this, it's really this, unless it's a second person, and they'll switch to a y. That's just how the perfective works. But so because it is the negative, ḳeḥ is what keeps this in its ḥla form. So the classifier says, I'm not going to go plus I because it didn't happen. There's a ḳeḥ over there, so it couldn't have happened. So now that it's ḥla, it's kind of vulnerable. So if w pops up before it, you can't say wushla, so it's going to be whoosh. It's just ready to contract. Probably because this letter it's not associated with really meaning. The letter I is associated with meaning, to say it happened. Does it make sense?
Did you see, when you said wuhla doesn't happen, that didn't make sense, but that sounds like a hard rule to me. Did you see what Yesu said? Where'd the first U come from?
Yeah, that was me, but yeah, it says you have hut plus you, and what's that you doing in there?
This is the Irialis.
Okay.
So the Irialis pops up for all negatives, all futures. And sometimes when it says it's not this, we're just comparing it to this.
Well, Irialis being, it's not real, sort of. It's not.
Yeah, there's some logical conflict with reality.
Okay. Okay.
But you can also think of it as not. It's sort of like not.
Okay.
But it does pop up in things that are just like, when you say like yekuge or yekusegenk, there's an Irialis in there. And it's also in all futures, because it hasn't happened. Even if you say it's going to happen, it hasn't happened.
Can you say that again? And it's in the 4 places: in all, future, perfective, and then negatives
and comparisons.
Comparisons. Okay, got it. Thank you.
So like like you say yage, it's big. Ye kuge, it's this big. So it's comparing it to something. So that's why you say kuge. That's why that ku is in there. And same with yekusegink. There's a little W in there that's sometimes hard to hear. Or they'll say kuseginki. It's little, a little living thing. And some of these are big. This is a big logical thing that we're sort of just weaving into your mind. And so sometimes I think the English brain is like, what? Everything needs to make sense for me, right?
Is the Irialis always a sound or something like a sound?
Yeah.
Okay.
And because those two are a pair now, like the perfective can just turn into a W. It's very common. It's not as common. An Irialis can also turn into a W. Yekusegenk, it's right there. Ka plus u. But when they're together, they usually stay, like that's why you're getting wulich'éx. It's doubling up right there. By doubling, I mean the k and the w aren't running into each other and combining, staying separate.
I need to belabor this issue because Nila Tohla said it implies a logical conflict, meaning that we're speaking about a state where something doesn't exist. Is that the conflict or?
Yeah, that could be it. And
Okay.
so it's in some verbs, it's just naturally built in there. Like if you ever
Uh-huh.
see some verb that has something dash, dash, there's an arealis just built into that verb. And some of them it's just built in there.
Ah,
And so like, especially ones that have to do with like suspecting something or, I'll try and dig out some examples, but some of them just have the just built in.
okay. Ganashish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
Okay, go ahead.
so what is the logical conflict with reality here? Is it because nobody is completely clean? Is it because it's because perfective? Oh, it happened, so it's not present. It's not presently happening. Is that the logical conflict with reality?
Well, it's sort of like, okay, so the perfective marker says, did it happen or not? That's what the perfective marker is. Perfective marker says, yes or no. Yes or no. Just tell me that. It's got to be one or the other. So then the plus I says, oh yeah, it did. But the arealis says, no, it didn't. So those two are on other sides, both sides of the argument. So one way to think of it is clash triggers the arealis. If you get clash, arealis got to come to the party. They're like a team. So that's the conflict here, is to specifically say it, because the arealis will mark that it did not happen. That's not the
So
only.
in the imperfective, there's no you.
In a negative imperfective, like let's go find one, and we will find an arealis in there. Let's see.
There's one in wulich'éx, but that's not negative.
Oh, right. Let's see. We'll do sleep. And then we'll do eat. So here's sleeping, and you get kesh uta. It's right there. So there, and the kesh will always bring an arealis with it, as far as a verb goes. And same with if we go down to cha for eat. Kesh ucha. Yeah, there you go. Kesh and So they say kesh, come to the party. Not without No way. And this you're getting kesh plus plus u. That's why it goes long. Kesh ucha. Okay. And so once you get this is a huge thing to be able to unlock perfective and negative perfective. Like if you could do both, it's a big thing. And as you go look up these, and yeah, the arealis can appear on its own. So arealis is a bit of a player. I'll leave clash at home. Whatever. Do what I want. Shame. There you go. Arealis is Batman. Clash is Robin. He's Sean. Don't even get his own movie, nothing. Oh yeah, so if we want to look at any of the playing, like we'll just go to the most commonly used one, yet. So the reason, oops, I think I just froze maybe. Did I freeze? Wulich'éx again. Oh, okay. Okay. So the playing verb is a pretty good example. Every playing verb is going to have an arealis in it. The reason why is because the concept of playing is basically kind of close to pretending. They're very similar patterns. What they're going to have is they're going to have ka and they're going to have because this is a comparison. Those two also, and it's really hard because it's in the exact same spot as the horizontal surface one. But if you got ka and then that means the other one, the ka is compared to. just like ye, ku, ge. So you're getting, it's compared to this. And this is a noun, which is a child. But you got a whole bunch of playing verbs, which maybe we'll go look at some in the dictionary. So when we go to, let's see, am I here? Go down to the English section. I'll make it bigger in a second. Oops. We're going to go down to the, there's a whole bunch of different verbs. So we're going to see this ush, ku, and a DL classifier. Ush, ku, ch'eta. Kucheta is a ball. So play, and then ush, kuch, qeqach. Qeqach is a swing. Ashkul Qikja. Qikja is a violin. Ashkul Kitza. Kitza is a seesaw. Ashkul Kena. Atwujakain is jumping. Ashkus Kucha. Sekuch is driving a boat or a car. Ashkudataja. The touch is swimming. Ashkutaka. Taka is a marble. And the verb is flicking your finger. And then ashkutyet, to pretend to be a child. So there is an irialis built into to all of these. That's why you get kuch in the front of all these verbs. If you change ush to sh and the ka to ka, now it's pretending. So I know it's not always the right thing to just jump to like some totally different thing.
Oops. I called you dirty. I was trying to say you froze.
Oh, this class is over. It's okay. I get to see it. Shots.
The apprentice has surpassed the master.
Walk it off, walk it off.
It happens. They're fun moments. I'm sure I told you guys before, like we were doing distance classes and I saw a student and we didn't really see each other in person very often. So I was like, oh, what's that UT? And she said, Kesh ishke. I was like, Khatake? I said, Kesh ishke. That's a yechsen. I was like, what did I do? Or I should say, what's a yechsen? And she made a little mistake. She went to say kachatushke, but she said, "You're bad." We'll have to do an unrecorded greatest hits of Tlingit airs. It's all great. Yeah, and the
Okay.
is frozen into the playing thing. Oh, quiet play is x'úxʼ. Yeah, so that one, it gets its own specific verb, which, and then there's also, you could say x'úxʼ, playing with your food. We only know that because we had to bring it into the language nest and say, kesh x'úxʼ, don't play with your food. Dog is mosquito. Ţaqa is a rocky point. And ţaqa is a rocky point. Wait, hold on, let me do that over. Ṭaqa. Yeah, and then ṭaqa is a mosquito, and then ṭaqa.
But you said Kushtaka was swimming.
Ṭaqa is a marble.
Or marble. Is the taka in playing marbles spelled the same?
No, it's got the apostrophe. So ṭaqa as opposed to ṭaqa.
Oh, okay.
So if we go look up that one, I'll have to write to, our internet's getting wonky here. I don't know why. It must be doing something. But we'll go look up ankh. So we go down here. And it's to flip with the thumb. And apparently to also cut small vegetables into pieces. Sure, why not? This is the Bring It On class. All right. It's like you're getting ready to carry in the groceries, and you're like, one more, I'll just take one more bag, one more bag, one more, and then the bags are all gonna break.
That feels like the same thing at working every day. That's the same word for it, I guess, huh?
Well, we'll sort of end on this. So I was in Kasan. I was in Kasan. Yeah, atlain wushkanach haskach art. A whole bunch of people were going to get together. We're going to have a culture camp. Me and two guys went out looking for food. Chat, so what did we want? We wanted halibut, red snapper, shrimp, Dungeness, and deer. Asayo to a dog. Yeah, you get the naxi aya. Yewe with tishliech. Eat kade aya. Yan has. Yan. Yan show to the ya. Akawe.
Dirty again.
Katake. All right, we'll do it on. We'll do it on Monday. Check the nak. Check the shit. So chet wulich'éx. I said kirchdelit and judenak or juchdenak. I quit and I quit working. Okay, we'll do it next time. Remind me. I'll tell you this this story. It's related to this kind of stuff, kind of. Okay, gonna cheese, Shuhan. Thanks for
That's
staying
it.
on.
Cheese.
Ganas
Cheese.
Siakansa.
Ah,
How to jick.